Okay, I want to do a quick video on the ideal setup if you are an agency or you service clients and you're going to have different types of logins, such as staff members, you may have partners, those different types of things. I know there's been some confusion on the setup, and really I've seen it done so many different ways. And when do you use workspaces and when not to use workspaces? So I wanted to create this just real quick walkthrough on my perspective of how I would set up my user accounts and at least how I would think about it. So first and foremost, as a marketing agency, you're going to have your internal enablement team. So your designers, your content marketers, your social media marketers, and your SEO reps. I put them in their own category, right? I want them to be able to manage users, log into our clients and access those resources. So you may not want that. You may not trust your team to have that much control. That's where shared workspaces and collab users become an important key for servicing clients. But they have to access the websites, they have to access their blogs, they have to access different elements that they're setting up, maybe email campaigns and things like that. Something to think about as I go through and explain the different permissions and how I'd set those up for your internal staff. And then you have clients. We do have just a single permission that really just says, hey, this is a client. And there's different places within the system, such as your projects, things that you're tagging on for a specific client itself. If you don't have that client permission, then they're not actually clients in our system. I know some have posted, hey, I've added a customer, added a user, and I'm not seeing them in the list to sign them as a client. That's because you need that client permission. And then you may have different types of clients, right? So you may have clients that have bigger teams. They want a more personalized feel of the back end. They want to brand it as themselves. They want their own domain on it. And that's where you would decide whether they're a client underneath your account, or do you want to create a whole nother account for them to where they can brand it. And the easiest way to think about it is, hey, is this client wanting to brand themselves within the back end, or do they just need the ability to add users and build their own teams and things like that? And that's where it comes into our teams permission. So where you don't have to set up a parent account, they can sit within your hierarchy, your direct hierarchy within your system admin account, and they can create their own teams, basically their roles, and then they can create their own team members. And so to do that, the first step, you're going to want to create a new role. And so if you're going to create a role for an internal team, so in this client enablement, so that's the first example that I gave you. And then of course you have account executives and sales executives and admins and things like that. But inside a client enablement role, what I like to do, and we've added additional permissions here, so you'll see that I haven't even come in here and checked these off to add them for this demo account. But all these permissions you can turn on and off. They basically just turn off these fields over here so they can't see them, whoever logs in as that user. You have, again, you want to use this manage users for a trustworthy group of users. Because essentially, especially our system on the back end is GDPR compliant. If you're going to go around, especially in different countries where it's required, whoever can access that data, you have to train them and understand how to handle that data and what they can and cannot do. So do be careful when using the managed users. I don't want this to be confused when you use teams, because you do have to include managed users and teams together, and I'll explain that in a little bit. In this case, I'm going to check off everything. I want my team, my client enablement team, to see everything that the system has. I'm not going to check off teams because they don't need to create teams. You may have client enablement teams where you want your individual onboarding team to create their own team. So you may want to turn on teams. But with managed users here, I like them to be able to access every client that we have. They can service them. That way we don't always have to apply a collab user or always have to create a shared workspace so they can access those assets. And I'll check off everything except client. Again, if your client enablement doesn't need access to the CRM, they don't need access to the marketing aspect or the dashboards and things like that. You just want them focused on projects, and you want them focused on managing tickets maybe and accessing the CMS and the blogs. Of course, you're going to want to check all those off. This is personal preference of what you want for your users. So I'll create my client enablement group. They can now service all the clients that we have within the system that are direct to us. So that's pretty straightforward. One thing a lot of people ask, hey, I've put a new user in and it didn't email them their invitation link. The reason for that is because you can manually add users, get them set up, and ultimately give them a temporary password to log in, or have them reset their password directly on the login screen to gain access. Or you can use the onboarding link. So this is the onboarding link, and there's just some customizations you can do for that onboarding to automatically get them on for your team. And then just real quick on the default lander, this is basically you can select any landing page within the system. When they log in, they'll see it. You can also position custom pages and things like that. So watch that video on how to do that and what that means. But basically, if you want them to always see the project management system when they log in, or maybe you want them to go straight to the CMS, you can do that. And that's the default lander for this role. So that's, again, just a sample of client enablement. In this case, I set up a sample sales executives. This is where you would apply. Here, I'll go ahead and check off some of these things that we've added as far as permissions. Turn off all of these different permissions here. Of course, they have access to. You can turn on and off what you want or don't want for them to see. A typical sales executive is going to need everything related to the CRM, workflows, obviously voice. They're going to need workspaces, email templates, email integration, those types of things. But social, funnel templates, you may want to turn all that off. And then I will go ahead and move. And again, client support, you may just want them handling tickets and those types of things. Manager roles, this could be where they have access to everything, manage users. So you just have managers who are on top. And then again, you just create shared workspaces or collab users to assets for your teams that don't have access to manage users. So clients, so this is important. For this to be an actual client in our system, and I know we're working on a massive upgrade to our client experience, at least client profile and limits and those types of things. So this will change and evolve very quickly, but we do have one little checkbox here that makes this a client. So by checking, this is now actually a client in our system. So where you see to assign something to a client, that's where that is applied. If you have a client that has several team members or several members, they may have 6 or 7 people on their team that are going to use a CRM or all the other different modules, and they don't need to build their own knowledge base center. They don't need their own courses. They don't need to brand the system as themselves. They just need their team will leverage either the project management system, the CRM, the websites, just all the other modules. You can apply our team's permission. Now, one thing about the team's permission is you have to also include managed users. Now, I know I mentioned previously that you should only give managed users to special groups because they have access to all your users. This does not apply when you have teams checked. All this simply means is they have managed users like permissions, but only for the teams and the team members that they set up. So again, if you're going to create a client that has multiple users and they do not need to brand the system, they don't need knowledge base, they don't need to create their own knowledge base, they don't need to create their own system courses, they just want to access the system with multiple users, you can create a role for them, apply teams and manage users, and now they can actually create their own teams and their own team members inside of that same hierarchy. The second they want parent account type of functionality, such as being able to put it on their own URL, their own white label branding. They want, again, build out their own courses, their own knowledge base center. They want to be able to their own hierarchy, just like you're doing that. And again, the use cases behind that, you hit a franchise, you hit a mortgage company, an insurance agency, a real estate agency. There's tons of use cases to that. Historically, a lot of these companies want their own personalized login. They want their own brand so their employees can see it. They don't necessarily want to see your brand all the time. So that's a decision that you can make, but by applying that manage users and teams functionality here, that'll allow them to go in and create their own teams within the system. So I'll just show you what that looks like and just give you a better rundown of that. So when I go into a client role here, let me go into this fake Jacob Hunt. So when I come in here, and of course, in this particular role, I put the landing page as the resource center. So this is an example, and I really need to do a video on this because mass majority of everyone on this video don't even understand how personalized you can make these experiences back here. And that's just a piss poor job on my part. I really need to focus on the client portal and video training on that. But so as a client here, I have the option of creating teams. This is the same thing as creating a role. We just call them teams. I don't know, it seemed better and name it better, and it's just easier to organize that way for them. And also the organization stuff that we have coming out for it's going to make a lot more sense. So essentially they're just creating a role. So you tell your user, look, you just go in and create a new team, a team, whatever you want, hit create. Now inside that role, inside this team, they have the options of setting permissions as well. However, they only have the options that they have been granted for their particular role. So they don't see all the other permissions. They can only assign permissions that they have access to. Now they can do the same thing. They can copy this link and send it out, decide on what default lander they see, things like that. But they only have these types of permissions when they actually set up a team. And then when they set up a team member, which they see themselves there, add a new team member, test member, team.io. You would apply that to your A team. And now me as this client, I can build however many users you allow them to build out within their system, right? So they can create teams and create team members. They can also apply the team's role to one of their team's permission to one of their teams. And so they could have a little hierarchy of teams as well. You can really service any type of client. It's just the easiest way to think about it is the branding aspect of it, the more personalization. They want, again, to build out their own courses and build out their own knowledge base center. And that's when you're going to make a decision, should this be a parent account or not a parent account. So I hope that clears some things up. I also wanted to clear up on the subscription side. So when you come into subscriptions, after you create your billing profile and then you add your products, when you add your product for your subscription, over here, if you do not append a role, you can onboard a parent account. So when you copy this and send that out, if you do not put a role to it, that's actually onboarding an actual parent. Again, you can slice up the functionality, sell it at a much cheaper price for just per user license for a small business owner or just a growing startup that doesn't need all these additional functionality, and then sell it more expensive for somebody who's going to get the whole enchilada, right? So a lot of different ways that you can do it on that side. And then again, just on a parent account, creating parent accounts, anytime you create a parent account, which is the first one in here, right? So you're going to have all your roles and then you have parent account. When you create a parent account, this will inherit your brand. And then if that customer changes up their own brand, when they create a parent account, it inherits their. This is helpful, and I'll give you a perfect example. There's several that are within our white label ecosystem that are white label providers. So they can not only do we white label for them, but they turn around and white label for their agencies that they work for, right? And again, that goes to infinite levels. And just know when you create your first parent, when you create your brand the first time and create a parent account, they inherit your brand. And then when that parent account creates another parent account, it inherits their brand. So cool. But just know, the branding goes all the way down, but each level inherits the branding before. If no one ever brands it and you just keep creating parent accounts, it'll always be your brand all the way through. So hope this video helps. If I was setting up my agency, to me, I have sales reps. Those sales reps would be, it's funny, I need a lot of sales reps for sure, especially with the demand, but sales executives, so whatever you call them, that's a role. Give them the CRM, give them all the functionality they need to be efficient in the back end. Create your client enablement group or your services team. Decide whether you want them to have managed users access or you want to set up shared workspaces for all the clients. That's another thing I do want to mention. So when you create a client account, typically what we do is we create a client account. Obviously we have a project, we go into that project, and when I'm on the project, you can actually just log in as that client if you're working on the services side. We'll create the assets in their account first and then apply us as collab users. That's typically how we do it. Only because I don't want to see 5,000 workspaces over here that I have to switch between. And if you don't have a whole lot of clients and you're providing a lot of services for a few, and again, a lot is debatable. 25 clients is not bad when you have 25 workspaces. And also this scale. So we need to put some search functionality and some things like that. Because I have clients who are using, or customers of ours that are using, that have upwards of 250 different workspaces in their account. And obviously we can make that way more efficient on the workspace side of it. So I'm not discouraging you to use workspaces. It's designed to be really awesome with workspaces because then you can just toggle between all your clients and have a lot of really good plans as far as aggregate views on your workspaces, which we already have, but just being able to differentiate very quickly between a client and filter on those aggregate views really quickly. Creating, historically, that's how we do it, is we go into the client, create their assets, and then apply our designers or marketers to those assets as collab users. So they see them in their account, they can always access them, but it's owned within the client. That's probably the biggest, I guess, I don't know how to explain it, but I guess the disconnect. Whoever creates the asset owns the asset, right? So you don't necessarily want to be creating assets in your own account and it's for a client, and it's not owned by them in the sense that it's all tagged by them, whether you apply it to a shared workspace or not. So it's almost like you want to do it a little bit in reverse, to where up the client's workspace and then share it with you, or you share the workspace and then just make sure you create the initial assets inside their account. I do need to just make sure on the roadmap that we're putting some attention to transferring assets, especially between clients and parent accounts and things like that. So this would be less of a thought when you're setting these things up. But I would always try to make sure everything is really owned within their system when you're setting, if you're servicing for the client. If obviously you just want to have visibility in what they're doing and want to be able to help them out quickly, shared workspace works great. And then of course, obviously the huge benefit of shared workspace is everyone creates all their stuff inside that workspace and everyone can see it and collaborate with it. But again, this just goes back to an agency mindset. It's you're setting all this stuff up for the client. You want to do it in their account. You either want to set it up initially as with manage users permission, and then do it inside a shared workspace if you want the benefits of a workspace. But again, 100% up to you on how you do that. But yeah, so other than that, the client role, that's important to make sure that you check that permission. That will be especially important as we scale up our client, details and things like that I have coming out. Hopefully within days here, it's going to be beautiful. Can't wait for that. And then you have admin roles and things like that. So just last thing I'll say it, I know I've already said it multiple times on this video. If your client has a need to brand their system in any way, shape, or form, they want to build system courses, they want to build video, knowledge-based center, you should set them up as a parent account. If they are just a regular business and just any business that doesn't have a need for that, has multiple users that they want to work with and collaborate with, set them up with the teams and manage users permission. And now they have the ability to act like a parent, but they just can't brand the system. They can't add those additional value that I talked about. Other than that, turn on and off things that you feel is necessary for your clients and your packages. When I create, like for instance, I've mentioned this in several of my videos, if I was going to go after small business and focus on creating a very simple package for them, it's just so easy for them to work through and use. Do some training videos to make the onboarding easy. I would apply, again, a done for you type of setup experience where I'm going to set up your email integration. I'm going to load your list for you. I'm going to import a couple of your email templates. I'm going to get your VoIP line set up. I'm telling you, business owners will pay $250 all day long for that, $200. And if you mastered those steps, that doesn't take long at all, 10, 15 minutes to really configure that component of the platform. And so it's high profit margins, and it's a great service, that personalized service, and more control when you're going after those small business owners. Get them on a small monthly per user type of pricing. Again, I know we've discussed all these different avenues, but the parent account component of it, you don't necessarily need to put them in a parent account in that scenario. And with the conversion to a child account to a parent account, I do have that feature functionality just about ready to go. But again, support is there to convert at any time that you need it. It's really easy to convert those right now. So again, just a lot of different ideas. I hope this clears this up. And again, probably rambled on a little too long on this. So appreciate you. Have a great night.